Okay, guys, surprise guest this week. We've got Phil Hutchinson, who we all tuned into last week, you may remember. Phil's very kindly agreed to come on and share a bit of his story, which is quite cool. So, Phil, without any further ado, welcome to our thing that we do on a Wednesday night.
Thank you, and hi, everybody.
Phil, you've been with us. I was talking to you before we started these video things on a Wednesday night. Maybe good to tell us a wee bit of your story, your milestone story, how you got in touch again, and then what's been happening since we started these live Wednesday night things. That would be cool, yeah?
That'd be good. I come from a working class background. I was born in the centre of Birmingham, and when I was 3, after the bombing, we were all rehoused. I was very lucky to be educationally bright, so I got a scholarship to the local grammar school, direct grammar school, and I went through that. And I got out of that sort of low working class labouring community purely by education. So when I was 17, I went off to university, very lucky to do that, fully paid by the local council. And I did engineering. I'm an engineer by qualification. During that time, I was sponsored by a company, so I've been working since I was 17. And on retirement, I was amazed to find that I'd paid in 47 continuous years of national insurance.
I know the feeling.
That engineering company then asked me to do a master's, so I stayed at Liverpool for 7 years, having had a thick sandwich course. And then I had a full-time job at the age of 22, 23, and moved to Manchester. Yeah. Spent several years there with my master's degree and MBA. I was heavily involved in the very early onset of computerization, and I was taken on by this company to develop systems to build major building contracts. So some of the big industrial projects that we've had in this country, like Norwich Power Station and some of the big hospitals, I was heavily involved in that. Couldn't make much money. I retrained as an accountant and went into Hawke Siddeley to make big diesel engines. And after 3 or 4 years of developing their systems, which are basically payroll and some valuations, I got headhunted by Woolworths to go and set up a financial planning department for what then was a new company. Wow. If you remember, Woolworths went bump. Spent several years with her, rising into the essentially I was in a property portfolio of Woolworths, and I was responsible for selling off 2,000 Woolworths stores and investing the money into B&Q. So from that point, I have been in really business development from a systems point of view at senior levels across the retailers that we still know. And that's quite good. At about early 30s, we had a family, and Susan decided that she wanted to come back to Nottingham. And IKEA talked to me, and I ended up as financial director and credit director of IKEA. Wow. Setting up IKEA in the UK, and that lasted for a long time. It's fairly obvious at that point that I was not going to be an FD or a credit director of a top 250 company with all those sort of perks, but I was very happy with what I was doing. And IKEA is a wonderful company, and that's where the association with MindStore came on, because across Europe, IKEA sent their senior managers, SVPs, there's no directors because it's a private company, but it's SVP, over to Jack to do the MindStore for Business course. And I think I did 2 or 3 of those. I spent several weeks, enjoyed it very a lot. So, I'm on the South Bank with the Red House and all that sort of stuff. And one of the claims to fame is that, one of Jack's selling points is, if you're positive about things, things happen. And the thing that touched me, a chord with me, Jack, you remember, is car parking space. Yeah. And for 25 years, I've followed your rules, and I've always had a car parking space. Right. I do the programming, and for those years, at the age of about 25 years ago, I set off on my own, and I inherited and went into the space because of sort of the VAT stuff I was doing with Woolworths, and I eventually was part of a team that went to the House of Lords, basically changed the whole of the retail VAT scheme. But claim to fame is I deferred the payment of VAT of about 750 million for over 3 years, because we put all the trading on credit cards. And I became the company's expert in credit cards, and I've remained that for 30 years in the UK and European marketplace. And and that money was funded B&Q development. It's quite good. Because of that, I have now helped launch 5 major banks across Europe, and unfortunately 27 credit cards and store cards. So things like, Lloyds, Barclays, Virgin Money, Northern Rock, I was involved in the 2 or 3 Tesco banks, and I came off that process at the latest Sainsbury's bank in Edinburgh. That was my last gig about 2 or 3 years ago when I decided to retire. So I've worked in London, Madrid, Amsterdam, Moscow, Belfast, Edinburgh, all over the place. Yeah. Being away from home for 6 months, commuting Monday to Friday. And then we retired. And the plan was, still is, to spend 2 or 3 months per year traveling. I have enough money to do that. Pension's fine. And that was the plan. I persuaded my wife, who's a senior architect, to retire. And our last gig was sort of 2 years in Edinburgh, enjoying it up there. But we decided to retire back to Nottingham where her family is. And we went off to Australia and New Zealand. I have a photographic business. So I've been with Leicester Tigers Rugby now for 20 seasons as one of their photographers. So I really enjoy that as a weekend. I've done lots of weddings, enjoy that. And our intention was, and we went over to Australia and New Zealand about 2.5 years ago to visit family. We spent 2 months down there and did 18 grounds, which is lovely. And then we came back. During that time, health-wise, which obviously is where we're at, during the 2015 Rugby World Cup, I had 2 hip replacements. Well planned. Good. I've had shoulder surgery. Both Susan and I were diagnosed as pre-diabetic 6-7 years ago, so we attended a major study at Nottingham University. And essentially, the view at that time was, if we're overweight, if we could lose 7 or 8% of our weight, the type 2 pre-diabetics would go away. And so it proved. And we were paid by the hospital to go on this trial. We were given the Cambridge diet for 9 weeks, paid for, which is basically a milkshake or water shake, 600 calories per day. And I lost 10% of my body weight. And the diabetes went down from 45 down to 20, which is brilliant. Ignore the numbers, it was significantly. So we did that. And then they put us on an exercise program to try and keep this off. What do we do? And part of that was either a high protein diet or a carbohydrate based diet. And we're on the high protein one, which is started to get the feel, the background to where you guys have been. About last September, October, because I had a mild heart attack, I was put on an exercise program, and I felt great, and I was doing rehab, 90 minutes exercise for cardiac rehab 3 times a week, including swimming, and I felt great. Then I fell off my bike, had shoulder surgery, and I went back on my cardiac program, but I never felt quite right. After 6 months, I should be feeling better than this. And then we started looking back into the diabetes. My weight had crept up a little bit, and my diabetic numbers were going the wrong way. Quite badly so. So I was put on metformin, which is the drug of choice. Everyone knows that. But that made it worse. So my numbers went from HbA1c. Normally it's about 25. I was at this time 50, where they put you on the drugs. After 3 months, I was 70. And after another 3 months, I was over 100 on metformin. Wow. So there's something wrong here. And it was then they had a doctor who said, well, we need to look at your liver. And that's when they found cancer on my liver. That was sort of February this year. And they spent about 4 months, 4 weeks, very quickly, trying to find out what it was causing the primary, which turned out to be pancreatic. And I was very fortunate. I had a good oncologist who didn't give up. And instead of every 2 weeks protocol, I was doing this thing in 2 days, because at that very same time, the whole COVID thing shut the hospitals down. But I kept on going. And at that point, I was programming, and I've been doing some programming. I thought, well, I need to go back and just re-look at the stuff I was doing 25 years ago with the river and the red house with the red roof and the healing rooms, which I had used in those times. I better back in touch with that.
Yeah.
And I think that ended up with a phone call or an email to you saying, have you got some books? And then I bought the book.
Yeah.
And then you're at the time, you just started your extreme team.
Yeah.
And you invited me to join, and so I've been there ever since.
Yeah.
And I try most Wednesdays I'm there, unless I'm not feeling too bright. So where I am at the moment is we started chemo back in the beginning of June, and yesterday, I finished the 12 sessions.
Yeah,
I've had a CT scan today to measure where we are, and I'll get to know the results on Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fantastic. I mean, the bit that's fantastic is you look so well. I mean, even if you just had your final.
I must be the healthiest terminal cancer patient,
Well, it's really good for us all to hear that because a number of times we've tuned into you, as you know.
You have, and the certain big thanks to Margaret and Irene and Ray and people like that. I know who they are. I do feel them, and a longer term, when I'm next up into Edinburgh and that area, because we still have a big social life up there, I hope to make contact with them personally and have a big thank you.
Brilliant. Well, we also have tuned into you on a Wednesday night, so a few hundred people have given you a blast.
Yeah.
Which is always encouraging. And I suppose one of the things for someone like yourself, I mean, I know because I've not been down your journey, but my own journey was quite threatening at one point, and then so you search for solutions. Have you found? I mean, when you got in touch with me, I was beginning to push keto at you. You'll remember that first phone call. And then, of course, you come on the Wednesday night, and if you look at the pattern of the coincidental interviews, of which you're now one, there's been a fair bit of the keto thing, a fair bit of an alternative view on health. Did you find any of that helpful? Has it been encouraging?
I think there's an awful lot of what we've had over the past few months, which has resonated, Jack. So, and also tuned in with the left brain with all the numbers, and I think that's one of the big things. I know you're not a particularly big number chap, but
no, it's okay.
I certainly am.
Yeah.
So because of the diabetic study, we knew about the high protein.
Yeah.
Okay. And we were given all those diet plans a long time ago by the hospital and the nutritionists.
Yeah.
We can't keep it all the time. And as I said, I think in a conversation we did recently, I just like me bread. So I am still eating a little bit more carbohydrates, particularly bread, than I should be. However, do you remember when we had the fortnight's trial of the NutriSense?
Indeed,
and that was very instructive. That was about chemo 3 or 4 for me. And I knew the days that my chemo journey is that I have 4 drugs. 3 are administered in hospital as a day patient over a 5 or 6 hour period on a Wednesday, and then I'm sent home with the 4th, which takes 2 days to go in. It comes in little like a balloon pump and it's self-administered, and then I go back on a Friday. Now on the Saturday, Sunday and Monday, a part of my ongoing treatment is to take steroids. And I was finding that I was really feeling off, on the Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and you have a fortnightly consultation. I said, well, what are these steroids all about? And he said, well, they're there to stop you feeling sick and nauseous. And I said, well, I don't feel sick. I have no side effects from this chemo whatsoever, except I feel a bit tired, which everyone does. And I get tingles, pins and needles from the chemicals in my fingers. Why am I taking these steroids? Do I need to? And he said, well, if you're not feeling sick, you actually don't need to take them. So we'll reduce the dose by half. And that just coincided with that 2-week period for our NutriSense. And the first week was pre-chemo. The second week was chemo. And at that time, my numbers, if diabetic numbers on a daily basis with your strips, if you're over 5, you're pre-diabetic. Over 10, you should be on medication. Well, I was about 15 on a normal week. When we went on the NutriSense process, during those 4 or 5 days of chemo, I was over 35. I mean, horrendous. So, but we had the data. If you remember, one of the benefits of that, they gave us the data. You had charts and everything else. So I just took it into my oncologist. Said, look, I'm not having a problem here, but this is creating a lot of problems for me, which is the blood sugars. Because part of the delivery package for chemo is, on day one, I'm taking a litre of glucose with the chemos. That's how they deliver it. So that was up there. And the other thing was that these high levels were, normal. If you've got a normal pancreas, your peak levels come down within 2 hours. And if it doesn't come down within 2 hours, you've got a problem. Yeah. These high levels of 35 are going on for days. Yeah. Didn't see any reduction. So anyway, that then helped me with the oncologist saying, I'm not feeling sick. Can we reduce the steroids? And say, yes. So we did that. And the steroids then dropped down to just below 20, just for a couple of days. Doing well. And that's so it's been. Since that time, the whole process since January, I have in the morning been taking my weight, my temperature, because I'm quite keen on that. Yeah. If you're above or below, that's an indication something wrong. My blood pressures and also my blood sugar levels. Yeah. And after chemo 6, we have this CT scan, and they noticed that one of the 2 cancer lumps had disappeared off my pancreas, and the three secondaries on my liver had slightly reduced. So, we're making some progress. That progress appears to have continued, but obviously today's CT scan will... Right. Now, the second thing about the NutriSensor is, well, what is causing all this problem? And the people we've had on contributing are actually giving us tips, right? Yeah. So this big cereal thing, the Kellogg's and the... Wow. So what do? We stop taking grains for breakfast, the Kellogg's cornflakes or whatever. Just stop doing it, Whoa, blood levels come down. Yeah. We then also looked at fruit. Do you remember so apples and pears, all my favorites, you could see the spike. So we just stopped eating the fruit. And then the other thing was puddings. And Sue and I eat fairly late, between 7 and 8 o'clock. So we brought the food forward and stopped having puddings. Yeah. And so late. We have diabetic ice cream. That's really good. And since that time, my diabetic numbers have actually gone down. So this morning, I'm at 6.5, which is normal. And I'm still coming off chemo. Fantastic. And the past few chemos, the max has not gone above 10. Yeah. So, what that shows, I don't know, Jack, but my pancreas full of cancer is working and working bloody well. Brilliant. Which is marvellous. How can you not be happy about that?
Absolutely fantastic. It's absolutely wonderful. I mean, one of the podcasts I listened to last week, I keep asking people go and listen to this podcast, was primarily because Belinda Fetke's husband, Gary, said, all of these diseases of our modern age are to do with a response to insulin. Yeah. And you're just making sense with that, aren't you? All these coincidences, you start lowering what might trigger insulin responses, and things start to get better.
That has to be concerned, because obviously my weight, I've always been a big lad. So if you go back a year, my weight had crept up from 100 when I last came off the diabetic bit, and it crept back up to 115. So that's 18 stone. Quite deliberately, sometimes you don't feel like eating, but my appetite through chemo has been good. Yeah. Lots of people have real problems. I've not had problems with my chemo, but one of the side effects is the people with chemo and cancer quite often don't have an appetite. Well, my appetite's been quite good, but I have planned the reduction of my weight sensibly. So about 3 months ago, I got down to 90. And then we had a conversation with everybody, the GP and the oncologist, saying, this has been planned. This is not a cancer issue. This is me being... and we talked about the nutrition and the diabetes. That 90 I've been maintained now for 3 months. It's constant. So I'm not going up or down. So I'm not suffering, weight loss through cancer. And my aim was to get from obese to overweight. Yeah. And I need to go another 10 down. He said, well, you can go another 10 down to 80 if you want, but don't do it quickly, because you are fighting this cancer. You still got it. It ain't gone away. No. You're still terminal. No. And if you're going to do it, great, with my blessing, but just do 5 kilograms a month. Well, I haven't lost anything in the past 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But he said you can go down to that. So throughout this process, when we contacted you, I was 18 stone. I'm now 14 stone.
Brilliant.
And 13 stone would be a weight.
Brilliant.
And I'm feeling good.
Here's the thing. If I give you a recipe and therefore everyone else, my personal recipe I've evolved over the years for bread, would you consider using it and getting off that bread?
I'm thinking about the sourdough, to be honest. I don't know whether that's where you're coming from, Jack, or not.
No, I'm a proper keto sandwich bready thing. You can do a lot with
that.
it. But so if I give you that on Wednesday night so that everybody can have it, would you humour me and have a go at it for maybe a week or two?
Absolutely. Yep.
Because if we could just, I mean, from what we're gathering, once you get rid of these things that are triggering the response to the insulin, the weight can come off. And sometimes it's as simple as just getting rid of that final bit of grain.
Yeah.
You know, so I'll give you that.
Great.
Do you mind if I ask you the question? I mean, this is fantastic. Are there any particular guests that we've had in the Wednesday night that stick out for you or had an impact on you particularly?
I think Shafalika was interesting last week.
Yeah.
I have me number.
Yeah.
I reached out to her and I told her what my particular problem was, and she came back within hours with a number for guys with pancreatic cancer and secondaries on the liver. That's great. So that's an old area which I want to explore.
Yeah. Are you going on the course thing?
I'm trying to, but I'm finding it difficult to book on and get these payments sorted out.
Oh, I just did it 10 minutes ago. It was a piece of cake.
I'm struggling, but I'll give it a go.
If you go to your PayPal, if you just go to PayPal and put in her address, it comes up.
Yeah, I'm not on PayPal. That's my problem. Sorry.
Oh well.
Having dealt with PayPal for most of my career, I'm not going that route. Not Apple Pay.
You don't.
They will take over the world.
Yeah, there's enough corporate trust. But anyway, there you go.
I think I find one or two I'm twitchy about. I think Saladino is marketing his own brand.
Yeah.
I think the Nutricent people have got a solution looking for a problem.
Yeah.
And an expensive solution as well, which we can do. If you're diabetic, the NHS will look after you. I get free strips. I do all that as much as I want. But I did like the app. Yeah. And I think as we've treated it, as you've recommended, I think that was the approach. And I'm intending to do it again after Christmas when I know I'm free of the chemicals.
Same here.
I listened to Ivor Cummings. I think some of his numbers are interesting, but sometimes he loses me. Even me.
Well, if I can understand him, that's impressing me if he's losing you.
Yeah. I think the astrologer chap that we had, and I'm conscious about the dire warnings of February coming up. Is so my IFA team have been kicked into touch to talk about what we're going to do in February, and I'm having that conversation in January about what I should do financially. But my portfolio, my markets are going up, so I'm very happy. But I think all of them together are telling a tale, and some I think you can discount, others are quite important. And I think I'm a bright lad, and I think I can help. But there is an awful lot of information out there which I hadn't realised. There's just an awful lot, and how much time do we actually spend following these things up? I mean, I can manage 3 or 4 hours a week on podcasts, but beyond that, it gets a bit much, doesn't it?
Of course it does, yeah. I mean, I'm fortunate. You get a dog, walk a dog, you can listen to podcasts. It's easy. It's certainly, it's very interesting times, because if people don't put in the time to find the information, they just don't know. And then that means you're relying on the usual sources. I mean, even just if you're a big Ivor fan, then just this week's podcast with Ivor, he's talking to a guy, a scientist who's in Cambodia, an American, and he started doing literally the maths on stuff back in March, and he follows the whole pandemic from a scientific and mathematical point of view.
Yeah.
And as we find when people do that, it's completely contrary to what's happening in the news. But he kind of, again, he's not saying there's a conspiracy. He just explains where the basic mistake was, and they've never rown back from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here we are, you know, we're still doing the same old thing.
I think my personal case is that holistically, you know, something somewhere down the line went wrong with my immune system.
Yeah.
And we're all vulnerable to that. You know, it's not just me. And whatever lifestyle we are, and we believe that things like, you know, your metabolic health, your diabetic health, and you know, your 7 or 8 primary systems are all related. And if something gets whooshed there, you got a problem. So
Yeah.
I know somewhere in the past, and you know, the indications that one of your guests led, I think, in the very early days, you go back and look 18 months, 2 years ago to find some traumatic event which may have caused this. And I've been searching for that, and I'm not quite so. I think it may be the transition into retirement. Sort of may have been a trigger. I think my 2-month trip to Australia and New Zealand may have been a trigger, but I've never found it definitely. And I've been searching, but I haven't done that.
Yeah.
So
just for people listening, can I comment on that?
Yeah.
I mean, what I found in my early phase of developing MindStore, I got involved in a lot of healing. I was interested in it, and I'd go and meet people who had cancer, people who had, you know, severe heart disease and other things, and started to, and one of the sort of this idea of round about when someone's diagnosed with cancer, if you go back about 18 months, they're very often, not always, but they're very often could be a fairly big stressor. Mm-hmm. That somehow or trigger some. It could be literally falling off a bicycle. You know, it doesn't have to be your wife walks out on you or something. It could be just some traumatic thing that happens. But that's one thing. The other thing now that because of COVID and searching by coincidence through, you know, interviewing Ivor, and then you do all the, you know, Saladino, and you do other things. The one thing that seems to be the case is that the metabolic dysfunction, for want of a word or phrase, it seems to manifest not in 18 months, obviously, it's happening 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of the so-called healthy diet, the seed oils and the processed carbs, and then boom. So, yeah, I mean, are you happy with the note, given that you're someone who's, you know, facing an issue and you're dealing with it? Are you happy with the sort of ideas that keep coming across, if you're following what I've been doing, that it's not, these things are evolving not because we're unlucky, but because of inputs?
I think so. I mean, in my own family, my siblings are 10 and 15 years older than I, so I'm you know, very much the youngest.
Yeah.
And they were war babies. They were not rehoused. So they lived through the Blitz in the centre of Birmingham.
Yeah.
And they had no food. And they are far healthier than I. And they themselves, they're still alive.
Yeah.
You know, one's 80, you know, one's coming up to 80.
Yeah.
And they have been discussing, why is it Phil that's got this, not us? Because we expected to go in time order. My brother's far more healthy than I. He's been off the grains and regular exercise all of his life. Wow. He's much healthier than me now.
Wow.
And they believe that the background to their health was the diet they had when they were children, up to the age of 15, which was a war diet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that there is some potential merit in looking at that. Okay. Now, my generation, my group, were the first of the NHS babies. Yeah. So, and if you read the NHS, it was about covering off maternal health during pregnancy, and looking after the child in infancy. Yeah. So, you know, when I went to school, we had a third of a bottle of milk every morning and a third of a orange in the afternoon, blah, blah, blah. And we were fed, you know, I'm not a Rashford diet, but that sort of thing. They didn't have that. And my brother lived on swedes and carrots and turnips, vegetables. And since the mid-50s, when rationing came off, he has never eaten vegetables.
Yeah.
You know, he'll have a few peas, but he said, I'm sick of carrots, I had them in the war, I'm not eating any more of them, sweet. You know, and he's had a very more interesting diet. He'd say, well, you know, Phil's diet, you know, since sort of the mid to late 50s has been quite different from what we had in the late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah.
You know, so that's
Very
got
interesting.
something there. And of course, from post-war, our society demands that, you know, we don't want pre and during war conditions. We want to be better. We want our society to be better for people to have all these things.
Yeah.
And so the, you know, the big farm and everyone else, which big agriculture has produced food, you know, so people don't go hungry. And they have done that in a way that maximizes output. And, you know, the problem we have as a society is there's too many people around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as Attenborough says, you know, humanity is a plague on the face of the earth. And it is true. You know, we don't have a housing problem, we have a people problem. Yeah. And these are all related. How do governments and societies regulate themselves to provide this? And what appears to be the cheapest way of doing is by pumping sugar and sugar products into their people, because sugar gives energy. We were told that, you know, didn't we all have Lucozade when we were kids, when we were poorly? That's just pure sugar.
Wouldn't have it now, but yes, back then.
So
especially when you're in hospital, remember, you got a bottle in hospital.
Yeah. So crazy. I mean, there is merit, and there is a logic when you look at on a societal basis for support of this. Whether you can actually bring it down to typical A, B, C, or D in terms of fructose, sucrose, all that sort of stuff, I don't know. The real technical people can tell us that. But I think there's some merit in that view, that we overeat.
I think the thing is, of course, it'd be interesting to meet your family and talk to them about that reality, because certainly, you know, I remember the milk as well. I'm sure lots of people who've watched this do as well, and the orange juice. But the thing, of course, is that the bread we were eating back then was made out of wheat that wasn't messed about the way the wheat is now.
Yeah.
As you say, big farming doing what they had to do. And, you know, apart from when you listen to the Fetkies and you begin to see the bigger picture with Kellogg's cornflakes, by and large, I'm pretty certain most of these food people did the best they could with the best of intention, with the resources they had. I don't think there's a conspiracy.
No.
Well, Kellogg's might be different. The thing is, everybody did the best they could. But now where we're reaching is, you know, this isn't about opinion any longer. As Gary Fetke says, this is actually scientific fact. Mm-hmm. And it can't be disputed. No. What can be disputed is all the science those guys are giving us to justify the paradigm. But anyway, let's not get started on that.
Did you see the article in last week's Country File with a Welsh baker who has dietary problems, and he's actually gone back to the seed banks and is now raising his own wheat and things. Yeah. And the problems that he's noticed eating current bread has gone away.
Yeah, I don't think that would surprise anyone. You know, we obviously, you know, for a long time we're able to eat grains, and it didn't affect us the way it does now. You know, irrespective of if you're a Paul Saladino fan and you remember where we came from and all that stuff and those arguments. But anyway, time's rushing on. We're well into 35 minutes now. I'm just aware of keeping you and keeping myself. I've got stuff to do. Is there anything else, Phil? You know, given that you've been through this journey and you're a member of our group, you know, and you're well loved, and as you can see from responses, and I think people who invest in just doing their best with a healing thing get connected at some level. Is there anything, given your experience recently, is there anything you'd like to share with us before we go?
At the moment, I'm into the autoimmune systems and what do I now need to do? The chemo has certainly extended my life, but if my autoimmune system went bodged some time ago, but it's now working, what have I got to do to improve that? Because there is an argument that I have in my head that says, well, if I can get my autoimmune system to work, it may actually go back and sort out the cancers that are currently in my body. Yeah. And what your program has been giving us is some insights into how we can do that. Yeah. Firstly, that there is no pill that can help your autoimmune system, because everything we eat goes through the duodenum or stomach. So one's acid, one's alkaline, everything gets blitzed. The best I can see is a drug which was mentioned on one of the podcasts called selenium. Which helps, and B12 helps. So I've been taking supplements for that. Just a 7Cs standard supplement that has those in. So that's one bit. Obviously, the keto red meat type diet as much as we can, but equally the stress. And part of my learning through this journey is reconnecting with the mind store and the mindfulness, because I do mindfulness as well, and de-stressing. So I'm trying to do that, trying to get exercise. So I'm trying to I'm not doing my cardiac because I'm not strong enough to do my cardiac, but certainly to get out. And I can do an hour of exercise per day, which is just a general walk. If I do too much, I go over the edge and I'm stuffed. So that's one. The diet is the third one. So I'm looking at those fronts. And my challenge to my oncologist is that, I'm on a pathway, and because of A, B, C, and D, you put me as terminal stage 4. And I have to have a pathway because of all the legal stuff. And my challenge to him now is, well, I've done stage 4. I need you to start thinking out the box and get me back to stage 2. What have we got to do? And the response on Thursday is going to be quite interesting. But he knows it's coming because I've had the conversation before. There's no reason why I should not look forward to. I don't know. But I know that. So
Phil, I'm going to have to go now. Is that okay?
Sorry.
Sorry for cutting you off there, but I've just got something to deal with. But this has been fantastic. And they'll go out on Wednesday night. Is that okay?
That's fine, mate.
And it'd be good for everybody, I think, once you get your feedback on Thursday, maybe you could let us know what you're at. But I think what's wonderful is that you seem to have an oncologist and a doctor that's supporting you, which is fantastic. I've been in situations where they weren't wanting to support me, but there you go. I need to go, but listen, it's great.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Phil.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the healing. That's been great. See you soon, everybody.
Cheers, bud. Bye.
Ta-da.